Hi and welcome back to Mustard Seed Recording Studios. This is a video tutorial on how to replace drums coming from mixed drum tracks. The challenge is how to best isolate each drum from the recorded drum mix for drum enhancements or replacements. Now what I'm talking about is triggering a trigger from each one of the drum sounds within that mix to fire off individual drums to go along with the mix. So ideally we should be able to get 7 or 8 different triggers to fire off based on 7 or 8 different drum sounds that are going on in the mix. There are a variety of ways that we can look at how to approach that, and depending on our needs we can use one of the methods. The first approach is just take the stereo mix and slice the drums up by transients and then drag the slices into new tracks. That separates out each one of the drum sounds and allows you to go in and apply EQ, compression, or some reverb or some overall effects to the existing recording. And if that's fine, if the existing drum recording is fine, then that's all you need to do, and that's actually the easiest and the quickest way to do it. The next method is to use third-party VST drum triggers such as Drumagog, Slate's Trigger, or SPL's Drum Exchange. And these are the best method, but they're also the most costly method if you have multi-track drums. So if your drums are separated out by snare, kick, hi-hat, etc., then those things work beautiful, and that's the way to go. And if you're very serious about this and do this a lot, then you're going to obviously want to go that route. You probably already own one of those VSTs. But they don't work all that great for mixed drums because they get confused on their trigger algorithms when there's a lot of different signals coming in. Another approach is to use gates and triggers to fire off MIDI based on amplitude and frequency. This is basically the same approach as the third-party VSTs, only you can use built-in gates and triggers inside of Studio One to do that. So it's actually a good low-cost alternative for multi-track drums, but again it has the problem of not being able to handle the mixed signal where you have hi-hats and tom-toms and cymbals all going on at once. The next approach is a free VST drum trigger. It's called KT Drum Trigger, and can be found on the internet, and it's a good alternative to multi-track drum replacement. It has the ability to actually go set up the triggers to listen to 3 different frequency ranges at once, so you can adjust it to adjust for kick drum, snare, and hi-hat as an example, but it does have some false triggers. And last but not least, the ultimate way to actually do this is what I've discovered is Melodyne percussion algorithm along with a few helper macros is the quickest way in terms of least number of keystrokes to actually separate out drum sounds from a drum mix and get them into a MIDI environment where you can drive a drum VST to replace the drums. And it works rather well. Okay, so let's say you have a stereo mixed drum set. Let's just show you some drums here. It's got kick, snares, hi-hats, cymbals, some tom-toms going on, and you want to, let's say you want to replace all that or be able to separate it all out and adjust each one of those things individually. Now the first thing I do when I start this procedure is I go ahead and make copies of my duplicate the layer out. Anyway, what that does is allows you to have multiple layers so that you can always have one to go back to. I'm going to go ahead and rename this one Ceremony 1, let's call it. So we know that we've been processing that one. I'm going to go ahead and just apply edit with Melodyne to it. It's gone in and identified the tracks. Now it's by default it's probably used the percussive algorithm. You can use the melodic and the percussive, and the polyphonic, and what that does is separates the drum notes out by pitch, and sometimes that's useful to help you to separate out cymbals or something like that. But most often it's just as easy to use the this method I'm going to show you here, which is basically based off the transients. But we'll be able to separate them out into individual MIDI notes. So I'm going to go in here and just zoom in on the front of the song here and just show you what we've got here. We can hear it, kick, snare. Show you we have the different things there. And there's some hi-hats in here you can't barely hear. Alright, so let's go ahead and just grab that kick. And this is a kick and that's a kick. So I'm going to go ahead and use my shift key and grab multiple kicks here. And then I'm going to use a command special select same beat in other bars. When I do that, it'll go ahead and select all of them. Oh, this is something else I want to show to you. If you accidentally have set a loop up, as you see here, we've activated a loop that select beats and other measures won't work. So you want to make sure that that's disabled while you're doing this process. I'm going to zoom out here, and I find the zooming in Melodyne a little bit awkward now because there's so many other commands you can do on that bar that it makes it a little bit awkward. See what I've gone here, and I've selected every one of the kicks in the song. So what I'm going to do is now go back in and zoom back out there and just drag that kick to the next pitch. It doesn't matter what pitch it is. You just want to drag it down one from the normal pitch, and so now that pitch is identified as a separate pitch. So when you convert this into a MIDI output, you'll be able to identify those as the kick drums and associate them with the proper MIDI note that you want for the kicks to be. Now let's go ahead and do the same thing with snare. That's the snare, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that snare and shift click on that snare, and we'll say go ahead and do a special select on that, and we'll say select same beats and all the drums. There we are. And then I'm going to just go ahead and drag that one up to another pitch. And that's why it's another reason why to make a good copy of your layers, because you're going to actually distort the sound of the original drum track, and you want to pretty much throw that away when you're done. But now I've separated out the snare and the kick, leaving everything else in the center of the song. So let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit at that. If we look at this, you'll see that it doesn't necessarily always work out perfect. So let's just go ahead and listen to it. You may have to go through and do hand adjustments. Okay, now right there, that's actually a tom-tom. I'm just going to drag that into a new note layer. Doesn't matter what one. There's a kick. See, there's a double. So he didn't repeat that pattern through the whole song. So you're going to have to go through and make adjustments. Snare. And you notice this has a kick and a crash on at the same time. So we'll show you what to do there. I'm going to call that a tom. Now the way we just process that is we go ahead and just copy it and make sure that we're on the same spot, and then hit a paste and drag that. Now we have a snare. So each one of these will represent a MIDI note. So that'll be the kick, and that'll be the snare, and that's a tom. That's a snare. That's a kick. You go ahead and just process through the song the same way, looking for some airs. Now here's a fill here, so let's take a look at that. So kick, the tom. He's doing a riff on it, and then two kicks. So he changes it. And then we've got an extra. So you go ahead and process through your song that way as quickly as possible, and you really only have to go through and hand do the fills in the song. So here's another fill. So you get the idea. Now, a quick way if you need to do a cymbal, a crash, and a kick at the same time, or a snare at the same time, to dupe it is just do a Control-C to copy it and a Control-V to paste it and drag it up, and there's your extra notes. To be at the beginning of the trance. Okay, there you go. Now you've got your drums individually identified out. So when you go ahead and close that and make yourself a drop in, let's just say, let's just bring in Easy Drummer as a quick example. Now when I drag that MIDI map out of Melodyne onto the Easy Drummer track, I'll just get the MIDI notes. And there you see all the MIDI notes that we've mapped out, individually spots, and they're just kind of random in spots. It doesn't matter about it, because what we're going to do next is turn on the Mackerel Toolbar, which is built also into the editor. And I've supplied some. These are GM based mapping in terms of the notes. They work pretty good for Easy Drummer and BFD and Slate drums as well. You're gonna have to make some minor tweaks. Usually those guys follow GM tracking pretty well, but they add extra things in, especially in the hi-hat area and the snare area. So if you want to get fancy, you're gonna have to make your own additional adjustments or just adjust them by hand. This gets you in the right ballpark right away. So what I do here is I'm going to go ahead and just zoom in on this a little bit so you can see what it looks like. And here's the first note, and I know that this is my kick because I knew that I dragged my kick down, and these are going to be my hi-hats, these are going to be my snares, these are going to be my tom-toms and cymbals, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and click. I'm going to do a control click on that note, and it selects them all. And then I run this macro right here that says move it to the GM kick position. And it did, and it came out of sight there, but you can see it's clear down there. I'll go ahead and bring in a map here so you can see what that looks like. So map, Easy Drum, default. Okay, and you go down and you can see it dropped it on my kick position. And I'll go up here and I'll say that these are going to be my hi-hats. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my hi-hat macro here, which will move those to the hi-hats, and then I'll click on this. I'll say that's going to be my snare. Move that to the snare. And I'll click on my tom-tom, high tom. Yeah, that's my low tom. I'm going to go ahead and make that a low tom. And then I'm going to make that last one my crash, cymbals crash. Now, when you look down here, we see how we've got this mapped out. Each one of these things will be mapped out to map that with that drum system. We're listening to both these together now. I've got a complete Easy Drum playing the exact same beat. And the neat thing about this thing is the MIDI notes have the right velocity. Not only does Melodyne identify the exact beginning of every one of those sounds within the stereo picks, it also gives you the exact right velocity level. So you get a track that sounds very much like your recorded stereo track. I'll switch back and forth. There you go. And that is how you, is the quickest way to take a stereo mix of drums and break it out into individual drums and apply it to a VST drum. And then you can go ahead and get sophisticated and make some of your snares rolls or, you know, ditties and stuff like that. And then add in additional fancy things with the hi-hat, such as quarter close, spark close, all that stuff. And then your chokes and all that stuff, and add it in. You can make your drums fairly sophisticated. This allows you to then go in and via your VST is separate them out and actually into separate tracks, EQ them, adjust them, replace the drums. Every drum that's in the stereo mix. There you go. And that's how I do it. I seem to get a lot of stereo mixes where I want to go ahead and put in a different set of drums, but I like the beat, I like the feel that the drummer has, so I go ahead and just use that to replace it. Works pretty good. There you go. Have fun doing some MIDI triggering mapping with Melodyne.